Alright, I figured we'd do the Sackville test in my car. So this is a BMW 430i. So the examiner will come out, he'll go through the hand signals. So you've got right, and then you've got left. So just think of left as literally left, so that's straight out. And then stop is going to be stop or slow down, so just think of down. Then the examiner's going to go through all the paperwork of the vehicle. So you want your permit, proof of insurance, and the slip for the MVI. And if you did a driver's ed, like defensive course, make sure you bring your certificate with you too. So the examiner is going to stand in front of the car and he's going to go through the lights. So what we do, he's going to say headlights. So we just turn our headlights on, and then he's going to say high beams. So in most cars, what you're going to do is just take this whole lever that the headlight switch is on and push forward on it. You can pull back, but they'll spring back. What the examiner wants to see is that you actually know how to turn them on completely. So just make sure you push them forward. Then the examiner is going to go through the signal lights. So he's just going to say right signal, left signal, and then he'll stand out back and ask me to put my foot on the brake, and that just shows him that the brake lights are working. So now we'll start the test. Right now I've got this car in Sport Plus mode, so it's going to slow itself very well on the hills and stuff. So I might switch it out to sport mode just to kind of play around with the accelerator and see how it slows itself. So now I'm starting the test. So I've got my left signal light on, left shoulder check, hand over hand steering. And you can see here, I'm actually driving against the arrows. So I'm like going the wrong way. And that's because in this parking lot, you have to do that. Just because on the right side, there's no lane, it's just all lines over there. So this would be like a stop sign. So I make sure I get a good stop, feel myself kick back, left signal's on, shoulder looks good, and away we go. Now see where this SUV is stopped? That's a perfect place to stop just because you're right at the sign, and there's a utility pole on the left side that makes it kind of hard to see the cars that are coming at you. But if you stay back by that sign, then you'll have a way better line of sight. No pedestrians, no cars. Double check the shoulder. Pulling out easily. So now what I'm doing, the examiner might tell me to turn left at the lights. So that would be onto Pine Hill Drive. So I'm watching my driver's side mirror. Got a good speed, so I'm going to throw my left signal light on. Double check the shoulder and just drift over gradually. Then in this case here, I don't want to rush down into this turn. All I'm going to do is basically park in the intersection. Now I can see all the way down the hill. So that just makes it a lot easier to judge cars there. So now we're on Pine Hill Drive. I find 40 kilometers an hour is a good speed on this street. I would say 45 would be your max. So now we're going to turn right into a school zone. So I got my right signal light on. Check my shoulder way back there. Now I can just focus on the intersection. Hand over hand steering and gradual acceleration. So now we're going into a school zone. You can see that there's a child there, but they just exited the school zone. But in this case, I'm just going to go down to 30. There is another child here. So if I didn't see any children outside in this area, any time of the day, any day of the year, I wouldn't have to slow down to the school zone speed limit. So what I do on the test, I just make sure the examiner can see that I'm checking for children. Some people will talk out loud, just being like, not seeing any children. Then the examiner knows for sure that you're checking. Coming out to the stop sign. Nice chill stop, feel myself kick back, and away I go. In that case, that's an all-way stop. So if I stop and other vehicles are approaching their stop sign, I don't have to stay and watch them. So here I'm going to turn left onto Chapad Street. I think that's how you say it. So I got my shoulder check. Going in at a chill speed. And I'm just going to gradually accelerate. This road is nice and wide open, so I'm thinking I can get up to 40, no problem. maybe even 45. Now I've got the car in Sport Plus mode, so let's see how it slows itself. So I give it some brake, the computer can see I want to slow down. Yeah, it does try to slow itself a little bit, but I had to use the brake there for most of that. So now I got a good stop. So the front of the car is right at the sign. In this case here, I've got an all-way stop, so I'm not worried about any other cars approaching their stop sign. Now I'm going to turn right here. So this is Zinc Avenue. Right shoulder check. Now we'll do a curb park. I really hope I don't scratch these rims, or I will be in trouble with wifey. So I got right signal, right shoulder check. Now I'm just trying to drift the car over as straight as I can. Kind of curious how close this is, because I've never curb parked in this car. So I'm parked. Now I put the transmission of the vehicle in park, pull up on the emergency brake. In some cases you might have a button that you would push, and since I'm level here, so level or downhill is to the right. Now if the car tries to roll, either way it's going to roll into the curb. So then the examiner is going to check it. Looks like I'm off by about 5 centimeters, so you can be 15 centimeters max. And so he checks it, he's like, yeah, we're good to go. So he tells me to head back out. So what I want to do is just take my time. What I do is I take off the emergency brake, kind of the opposite to how I put it in park. Now I put my foot on the brake. All right, now we got it in drive. Now the thing I have to remember is my steering wheel is turned to the right. So if I just accelerate here, I'm going to end up going up onto the curb. So now I bring the steering wheel to straight, throw my left signal light on, check the mirror, double check the shoulder, and out we go. And remember, don't think of this test as like one big scary test. Think of every area that you go into, that's all you're thinking about. So like here, coming through this curve, I'm just thinking, is anybody coming through that intersection? Now I'm coming up to a set of lights, so this is all I'm thinking about, is this set of lights. This would be a very common route that they could take you on. I'm gonna throw my left signal light on. Now we're going from Zinc Avenue to Cobequid Road. Looks like the Jeep's going left. No pedestrians. That car's turning right. So now I always turn into the left lane, and then here the examiner is not going to tell me anything. He's not going to say anything. I know every single time I go back to the right lane. Now we got a right signal, right shoulder check going into the exit lane. So there's no pedestrians crossing, no cars coming through. Gradually accelerate out. Now this is Glendale Drive, so this is all 60 kilometers an hour until you get up here kind of close to the highway section. So they just have it at 50 just because they're rebuilding the interchange up here. Now I'm going to go straight at these lights. Looks like that car is going to yield. Now if it's your test, you're going to be exactly at 50. So down here I'm going to exit right at the lights. So I do my signal and my shoulder check back here. Now I can just focus on the intersection. Remember, the most important thing here, as you're coming down to this exit lane, the yield sign is installed on the other side of the cliff. So you wouldn't see the yield sign until you're out there in that lane. So all you do as you're coming down, make sure you get lots of good braking. That way, if you do have to stop for vehicles coming through the intersection, you can stop no problem. And then since I've been sitting here for about a minute or so, just gonna double check my shoulder again. So now coming in at a nice chill speed, nobody's coming through the intersection. Now we're going out to the highway area. So what we wanna do here is just gradually build our speed up to 100. What I do is I stay around 70 through here. Once I get past the last tractors, now I'm gonna push it up to 100. to push it up to 100 kilometers an hour here, 95 minimum. So what I do is I check my shoulder there, make sure nobody's trying to get into my lane. I'm up close to 100. And I'm just going to steady brake down the hill. So I want to be at 60 kilometers an hour by the time I get to the overpass. So see how the number's just coming down nice and steady. I don't have to signal here, I'm already established in my lane. Coming through here, don't go below 55. Even though that sign says 45, you would never want to do 45 in any highway area. So right here, I'm just watching the highway. It looks like there's good gaps. Now this yield here, I don't actually stop. I just kind of watch the highway just to make sure nobody's trying to get into my lane. So now I'm in a 70 kilometer an hour zone, merging on the highway. This is the tricky area of this test, because this is all 70 kilometers an hour, just until you get to this overpass. So right around the green sign, we'll just push that speed up a bit. So as I accelerate, I don't do it too hard, just so that vehicle is able to pass me and I don't kind of throw them off or anything. So I got a good following distance. Now I'm up close to 100. So on the highway, all you're thinking, you want a good following distance. You want that left lane to be able to pass you, no problem. They're always flowing ahead of you. You don't want cars hanging out next to you. And then as long as all that is like where you want it, you got a good following distance, good space around you, then you want to try to get yourself as close to the speed limit as you can. But if my following distance suffers because I'm trying to like get to 100 kilometers an hour and then maybe I have to follow a bit closer, following distance always takes priority over speed. So here I have to watch the number just because the SUV is going a little bit faster, so my following distance is increasing. So if I was to go by the SUV for my speed, then I would end up over the limit. So I just keep watching the speedometer in the car. So this is Highway 101. That's exit 2 for the Beaverbank connector. There's two signs here. What I do is at this first sign, right signal, right shoulder check. Now what I want to do is keep as much highway speed as possible. Once I actually get into this exit lane, that's where I come onto the brakes. That way I don't slow anybody down on the highway. And I want to be around 50 for this curve. This yield is like the other one at that interchange. All I'm doing here as I come through is just kind of watching to make sure nobody's like right beside me trying to get into my lane. So nobody's there, I got a 70 zone. So the first thing I do once I come around the corner, I want to see if that light is green. If it was green, I would just stay at 60 on this side of it, just in case it goes yellow. Then once you're right about here to that solid line, if it's still green, then you can gradually build yourself up to 70 kilometers an hour. Got a green light, nobody's running the red light. So same thing here, I want to get myself close to 70 kilometers an hour, as long as it's not affecting my following distance or lane flow. So this sign here is telling me I've got a 50 zone coming up, so that I'm just bringing my speed down gradually back here. Didn't have to hit the brakes or anything. So now we're at 50 kilometers an hour, right signal lights on, right shoulder check. First thing I'm checking for here is pedestrians. So I got no pedestrians. Now I'm checking for cars. No cars coming through the intersection. So I go out into my lane. If you did have cars coming through the intersection, you could still go out into your right lane. You just want to do it a little bit slower and a little more cautiously. Now I'm on Sackville Drive, so this is like the home stretch of the test. So it's all 50 kilometers an hour. So I'm just thinking good following distance. So all I'm doing here, I just keep glancing down at the speedometer just to have an idea how fast I'm going. And I'm just being aware, like here as I accelerate from the lights, I'm going to be going downhill. So I might get a little extra speed. So in this case, I might accelerate just a little bit less, just to compensate for the hill. So throughout the entire test, I'm going to have my hands on the steering wheel so they can be at 9 and 3, 10 and 2. And I'm going to have my thumbs resting on the outside of the steering wheel like this. So as I accelerate, what I want is that SUV to slowly create my following distance for me. So I'm accelerating a little bit slower than them. Now I've got a good following distance. I'm gonna let off the accelerator. Feels like the car is slowing itself, so I'll just give the accelerator pedal a little bump. So I didn't hit the brakes on the hill, I'm just hitting them here just so I can stop behind this vehicle. So for my stopping distance, I want to be able to see the tires of the vehicle in front of me and just a little bit of pavement around them. Same thing here, just accelerating gradually. This SUV is creating my following distance for me. So now I'm around 47, keeping an eye on the driver's side mirror just so I have an idea of what's going on in that lane. Wondering if the red SUV might pull out, but it doesn't look like he has a gap. So now as I come around the corner here, this set of lights will go yellow at some point, just because these cars are waiting here. But if I come through here and I didn't see any cars or didn't see any pedestrians, then this light is not going to go yellow. So when that pedestrian light for the crosswalk finishes the countdown, if there's no vehicles or pedestrians here, it's just going to flip back to that walk symbol. So the light wouldn't go yellow, it's basically going to reset itself. Same thing with these two intersections. The only thing to keep in mind here is sometimes this light might go yellow when you make it through, but then you'll have to stop at the next one. So these two sets of traffic lights are actually synced. Now we're going past access. So here we'll pretend that we just pulled out of access again, and now we're going to go down and do a different version of the route. So I'm just going to lightly press my brake here just because that car is turning. So this time I'm staying in the right lane and I'm going to go straight at the lights. Now I'm going to start going up a hill, so I'm just compensating by giving it a little more acceleration. And the trick to all these hills is you want to identify when you're at the top of a hill. So like right here, this is a perfect example because this hill doesn't look too steep. But what will happen if I come up here at 49 and I'm not really watching my speed, I'm going to start to gain speed and then I might end up going over by like 5 or something. So here I'm just gradually braking because I want to do my lane change, watching my driver's side mirror, check my shoulder, and go over gradually. So in this case, we're turning left at the lights on Cobequid Road. So that's why I changed lanes so early. If that right lane wasn't full of cars, I probably would have waited till I was a little closer to the intersection. And I'm thinking that arrow is going to end before I get to it. But you never know. So coming in, I got a good following distance. Shoulder looks good. Hand over hand steering. Always turning into the lane that's closest to me. Then I build up that speed. Right signal light, right shoulder check. Then we'll go straight at these lights. You can see that blue SUV is blocking that driveway. That's very easy to do, but just try to be aware, like whenever you're driving, just try not to block driveways. But everybody does it at some point. I've never seen anybody get fined for it. It's just more embarrassing than anything. Same thing here, just accelerating a little bit slower than that truck in front of me. Now I got a really good following distance. You'll probably find Cobequid Road is like the bumpiest road on this test. So what you do is you try to avoid as many potholes as you can. But if you're driving and then say you see like a big pothole or bump or something, don't feel like you need to shift sort of dramatically in your lane. If you can sort of slightly make an adjustment to avoid it, go ahead and do that. Don't stress if you do hit a pothole. So here I'm just keeping this following distance, going straight at the lights. So that's Zinc Avenue. That's where we turned left before to go down here to Glendale Drive. So in that case, if I turn out of there and I'm in the left lane, I go back to the right lane. So what I do is if I turn left from that intersection, I build my speed up in the left lane with my right signal light on. Now I'm exiting Cobequid Road onto Glendale Drive. So I double check the shoulder. So So I don't have any pedestrians in the crosswalk, no cars coming through. So the reason all this traffic is lined up is because the left lane is empty. So what is supposed to happen, they call these zipper merges. So there's two lanes, just like a zipper on your jacket. You got two zippers, and then when you zip it up, it comes into one. So what's supposed to happen is the vehicles in the left lane are supposed to stay in that lane, and then they come up to the end and everybody just kind of zippers in. So you go one vehicle from the left, one vehicle from the right. So I'm going to throw my right signal light on, check my right shoulder, there's no cyclists. Now I can watch the vehicles at the intersection to see who I might have to yield to. So I'm just steadily braking. Looks like the dump truck is not going to go for it. So another thing I'm thinking there is that dump truck is really heavy, so it's harder for him to make a left turn from a standstill. So now we're back in the highway area, and what we want to do is just gradually build that speed up to 100 kilometers an hour. And you need to get it to at least 95. So if you don't do that, you'll lose points. So if you come out here at 80, 85, you're going to lose points. So here what I do, double check that nobody's looking to get into my lane, and we just push it right up. So we're just steady braking. Want to be around 60 at the overpass. Through here, I'm just trying to stay around 55. Now I'm watching the highway, but in this case, I'm not going to merge on the highway. So I'm just going to stay in this right lane. So I'm coming out at a slightly slower speed than the vehicles in the left lane, so they can get into my lane if they need to. Then I'm just gradually speeding up to 70. So remember, this is the weird 70 area. And then if, in this case, if they take you in here, you will be going back to access. So what you're thinking in here, around the corner, it's going to go down to 50. And this is the only place on this test where you're going to go directly into the left lane. And that's because the right lane only exits, and there's no sign there to tell you that. Now what I have to do at the lights, right now we're going, one lane is going straight, but then it's going to split into two lanes. So I always want to go into the right lane, but I want to make sure that I do it safely. So instead of in the intersection just driving directly into the right lane, what I have to remember is there may be a vehicle coming out of the exit lane for that other road, and as I go into the right lane, they may not yield. They may just come right out into my lane. So what I'm going to do is throw my right signal light on in the intersection. Then everybody behind me knows they don't need to pass me on the right. And then I'll hang out in the left lane, build the speed up, and then switch to the right. So we got right signal. Looks like the SUV won't be an issue. Building up the speed. Double check the shoulder in the mirror. Then I'm still gradually building the speed up. So now I'm back on Sackville Drive. This is all 50 kilometers an hour. Something that's interesting, in a driver's ed car, you'll get a lot of vehicles that will pass you right away. In a BMW, I'm doing 50, the same as a driver's ed car, and now I've got a bunch of vehicles hanging out behind me. So I guess the nicer the vehicle, the nicer people are. Here I can see that the lights are red, so what I did was I let off a bit. Now I see they're green, so I'm just going to gradually accelerate. So that's Sky Ridge Avenue. That would be another common place where you could turn left after you come out of access. But that scenario would be exactly the same as Pine Hill. Just let off the accelerator there just because I was close to 50. So if you go over by 1 or 2 on the test, don't panic, just let off the accelerator. If you had to brake a little bit, brake a little bit. But if you're at 50 and you drift up to 55, maybe you're going down a hill or something, that would be a situation where you really want to come onto that brake pedal. And it wouldn't necessarily be an automatic fail if you went 5 over. If you were to bring that speed down right away, you're actually kind of demonstrating that you can control the vehicle very well. Now I'm going straight at the lights, so that's Pine Hill Drive. So I want to go back to access, but I'm going to need that left lane. So what I'm doing here, keeping an eye on my driver's side mirror. So that lane looks good. Left signal light's on. Now everybody knows what I'm doing. Double check the shoulder and go over gradually. Now I'm turning back into access. Biggest thing to remember here is this driveway can kind of sneak up on you, so make sure you got a nice chill speed. Now for the scariest part of any road test, reverse parking. So those arrows in the middle, they mark half, so I just have to make sure I stay on the right side. And this reverse park might be a bit embarrassing because I never drive this car. If it was a Toyota Corolla or maybe a Honda Civic or something, I'd be able to get it on the first shot, but this will be kind of funny. So what I want to do as I'm coming in, right signal, right shoulder check, then I line myself up with my line. So after I've got myself lined up, I put the car in reverse, turn the steering wheel as far as it goes to the right, and then I hold it there. Double check around me, make sure there's no pedestrians, and let's see what happens here. Yeah, I think I'm gonna end up between the parking spots. So thank goodness this car doesn't say driving instructor on it. But this is a good chance to show you, if this was to happen to you on the test, all you want to do is correct. So what I would do as I was coming in there, if I knew I was off, I would keep going back as far as I can. Now I've bought myself some space out here to work with. So now I just drive out to half. I'm gonna try not to drive beyond the arrows. So I'm driving over to the left because that's the way I want the car to go. Stop about there, turn as far as I can to the right. And I just kind of watch the mirrors. Still not the best. So they're not gonna let you use the reverse camera on your test. So what you do is basically you're looking back the whole time, but you just stop here and there or slow yourself down and just have a look around, just to make sure there's no pedestrian. Then what I'm doing is see how far back I am. I'm just watching the curb out the right rear window. Now in this case, if this was to happen, I still, believe it or not, have another chance to correct it. So I'm just gonna do the same thing again, but just bring it over a little bit more. There, that's dead on there. So now I don't have to turn the steering wheel or anything as I go back, because I know I've got the car lined up. So I just looked at my side mirrors, I could see the lines in relation to the car, and back I go. Looking at the right rear window. Looks like we're close enough, so we go park, and emergency brake, and that would be the test.